Okay, welcome in. Brian Edwards, MajorWager.com, coming to you on Saturday, May 18th. We haven't done a UFC video for a while, so lots to catch up on, although I've been providing content on the homepage, and you can check all that out. And one of the stories I had yesterday was about the opening of odds for Anthony Pettis and Nate Diaz, and we'll get to that in a minute. But we've got a UFC Rochester card going on tonight. Excuse me. And it'll be on ESPN Plus. I don't have a lot of likes on this card, and I don't love this play, but I am going to go with Kevin Lee in the main event against Rafael dos Anjos, who has lost back-to-back fights and is now age 34. Kevin Lee, the Motown phenom. Lee, much younger, pretty sure he's 25 or 26. Anyhow, he has been at 155, actually fought for the interim belt, had a great fight with Tony Ferguson in early 2018, and lost that fight, lost his last fight to Ally Aquina, but had a really rough weight cut. He was cutting a lot. He's a big 155er. He was cutting a lot of weight. So he's going up to 170 to make his welterweight debut. Obviously, a lot of guys have done that with success, like Dos Anjos, who was the former lightweight champ. But after having that tough cut and losing to Eddie Alvarez at an event I was at the MGM Grand Garden Arena, what was that? Be about 3 years ago, not quite, almost 3 years ago. It was around UFC 200. In fact, it was 48 hours before UFC 200. Anyhow, Lee is going up to 170, does not have to cut much weight, and I think it's going to help him. I think it's going to have him with more energy, more power, etc. And Dos Anjos has struggled with wrestlers lately, and his last two losses to Colby Covington and gosh, who did RDA lose to before Covington? I'm shooting a blank on it. My apologies. Just Kevin Lee for me tonight. Now, I don't eat a lot of chalk in UFC. In fact, I won't play anything north of minus 150, maybe occasionally a minus 160. But I do see a lot of favorites, and I like them to win, but I don't risk that chalk. But the way you can avoid that is doing a parlay. And I've got 1 3-fight parlay, not for a lot. It nets about a plus 140 return. But if you want to give it a shot, here it is. Charles do Bronx Oliveira minus 330, 340 against Nick Lentz. So I like Oliveira in the parlay. Let's also go with Patrick Cummins, minus 250 against Ed Short Fuse Herman, who is almost 40 years old, hadn't fought in over a year, hadn't fought much at all the last 2 or 3 years. And then the third one is this young lady who a lot of people think has a special future. She's undefeated, Aspen Ladd, at around a minus 300 fight. So don't love these two wagers for tonight, UFC Rochester, but I'll have an average amount on Kevin Lee around minus 105, minus 110 against Dos Anjos in the headliner. And then a 3-fight parlay for a small average amount that'll net about a plus 140 return. And it's on 3 favorites: Charles Oliveira, Aspen Ladd, and Patrick Cummins. All right, now back to what I initially mentioned, which is Anthony Pettis and Nate Diaz. Okay, so betonline.ag opened Nate as a minus 120 favorite with Pettis at even money. That didn't last very long. Within an hour, they had made Pettis the favorite at minus 120, then to minus 145, and then to minus 150, where he stands right now. Nate Diaz, the 209 Stockton, California product, plus 130. He'll be returning to the cage for the first time in almost 3 years since he split a pair of fights with Conor McGregor. Also, a new new number out there for UFC 241, and Pettis and Diaz will serve as the co-main event to the heavyweight title fight between a rematch between Daniel DC Cormier and Stipe Miocic. Right now, Bet Online has Cormier at -135, Stipe +115. But that's the cheapest price you can get on Cormier at Bet Online. Others like Bovada have Cormier -160, Stipe +130. A new fight and odds out. Yoel Romero -210 against Paulo Costa +180. That's a main card fight at UFC 241. To be determined, Israel Adesanya, the last style bender, against Robert Bobby Knuckles Whitaker, the reigning champ Whitaker against the interim champ Adesanya. Bet Online has Whitaker -140, Adesanya +120. That's going to be a fight in Australia. I don't think they've determined which event that is yet. Now, UFC 242 in Abu Dhabi, they haven't confirmed it's going to be Khabib Nurmagomedov against Dustin Poirier, but it's going to be. And Khabib is -360 at Bet Online, Dustin +295 on the comeback. Other news, okay, we've got UFC 238 coming up on June 8th, and Donald Cowboy Cerrone against Tony Ferguson was added to the main card here recently. Most books have Ferguson around -180, Cowboy around +150, +160 on the return. I tell you, a fight I like on that card, or a bet I like on that card, is Aljamain Sterling around -140 against Pedro Munoz, and I'm worried it'll go north of the odds where I don't, like to talk. I don't want to get in that -160 range. Excuse my live odds product chiming in there with a final. Okay. Oh, another news. Tyron Woodley pulled out of the UFC Minneapolis main event rematch against Robbie Lawler. Of course, Woodley won the welterweight strap by beating Robbie Lawler in Atlanta back at UFC 201. He held that strap for years, although he wasn't very active. In fact, I think he only defended it successfully 3 times, retained it a 4th, that draw. There's my live odds again. Sorry. With Wonder Boy Thompson. And anyway, back to speaking of Wonder Boy, Pettis made his debut at welterweight and beat Wonder Boy with that second round knockout last month. Pettis, that was his welterweight debut, and it's only his second time fighting there. I didn't point that out earlier. The Nate Showtime fight is at welterweight. Okay, so neither guys are going to be cutting weight, and it'll be a 3-round affair, which probably is advantage Pettis. Nate, notoriously a slow starter with endless cardio, and can do his best work in the 4th and 5th rounds. So I think that helps Pettis as well. So with Woodley out against Lawler, the UFC is actively looking for a replacement. A lot of welterweights were throwing their name in the hat yesterday on social media, 2 of them being Darren Till and the other being Santiago Ponzinibbio out of Argentina. I like that matchup. They are both stand-up fighters, and well, as is Till, but it seems a little soon for Till to come back after that devastating knockout against Jorge Masvidal, who'll be back in action against Ben Askren. And why we don't have odds for that fight yet? Don't ask me. I don't know. Brian Edwards, MajorWager.com, getting you caught up on some UFC fight odds, details, injuries, etc. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, over now.